I just came back from one of California's biggest horror conventions. This is Creep.ie Aftermath, a horror convention located in Ontario, California, and one of the fastest growing conventions in recent memory. It's basically a horror fan's paradise with tons of horror themed merch, props, and even a couple of haunted walkthroughs. So obviously a lot of fun stuff to do. And on top of that, an incredibly stacked lineup of celebrity guests. Usually when I think about going to a convention, the guest lineup is the make it or break it for me, because one of my favorite hobbies over the last few years has been spending hundreds of dollars collecting autographs. I don't know what's wrong with me. And originally I was gonna skip this show until they announced none other than Brad Dourif, aka the voice of Chucky the Killer Doll. He normally doesn't make appearances over on the West Coast, so I knew this one was going to be special. But not to mention, you also had a bunch of other legendary actors like Christopher Lloyd, Fiona Dourif, Danny Trejo, Robert Patrick, and even the gods of pot themselves, Cheech and Chong. And with the Ontario Convention Center not being terribly far from me, I decided to spend 3 days of horror chaos at Creep.ie Aftermath 2026. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video, and if you do all of that, then you are officially So the first day of Creep.ie Con didn't really have a lot on the agenda other than trying to meet Brad Dourif, since I had a feeling that everyone was going to try and meet him, and I figured the best day to do that was on Friday. So for context, this convention offered both general admission and VIP tickets, and with the VIPs you had the chance to get let in a half hour early. However, that was only for Saturday and Sunday. If you went on Friday, general and VIPs were let in at the same time, meaning the poorer peasants, aka the general admission attendees, had a higher chance of getting to an autograph table before some of the VIPs, and I knew I had to take advantage of that to my best degree. So I arrived at the convention center at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, about 3 hours before the convention opened. Also, for any convention newbies here who wants to go to one but doesn't know what the f to do, getting there early as soon as possible is a great way to further guarantee everything you want to do. And if you want to learn a lot more on how to have a successful time at a convention, I have a whole video on horror convention tips and tricks, so be sure to check that out if you get the chance. Anyways, as I continued to wait in line in the burning hot California sun for 3 hours, I saw more and more people bring in a record amount of Chucky dolls, which meant that this weekend was probably going to be a Chucky con. And I wasn't joking, I saw Chucky memorabilia everywhere, from merchandise to even a goddamn Chucky themed taco truck. Only at horror cons, folks. Anyways, after the 3 hours passed, it was time to enter the convention, and I sprinted my way over to Brad Dourif's line, and as soon as I got there he was, the man of the hour himself, looking so graceful as he signed the leg of a Chucky doll that someone probably bought at Spencer's. And as I waited in line, I looked behind me and started to notice the massive crowds forming a line, and immediately I was like, oh, this is about to be a madhouse all weekend, huh? We'll get to more of that in a minute. So after about 30 minutes passed, it was finally time to meet Chucky himself. Unfortunately, I didn't get any footage of my interaction with Brad because the convention had a very strict no camera policy at the autograph tables, so enjoy this footage of a Chucky Q&A panel as I talk about my experience meeting him. Right off the bat, I gotta say Brad Dourif was an absolute gentleman. He actually took the time to talk with all of his fans, unlike a lot of other celebrities I've seen. That's probably why his line ended up getting so goddamn long throughout the weekend. But you could tell how passionate he was about the Child's Play franchise. In fact, I'm pretty sure he has stated before that Chucky's the only character he's gonna continue playing in his career. Besides that, he's basically retired. But he told me all about being hyped to be in another Chucky movie in the future, and also prepping for his iconic Oscar-nominated performance as Billy Bibbit in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So shout out to Brad Dourif for being a stand-up guy. Funny enough, since it was only 5:30 p.m. by the time I had met him, and since that was the main thing I wanted to get done, I pretty much had nothing else planned for the rest of the day. But you remember how I said how crazy his line was? Well, this is how busy his line got on a Friday, which is normally the least crowded day of the convention. I heard people were waiting around 4 to 6 hours to meet him, so to only get him in 30 minutes without a VIP is something that still hasn't crossed my mind even days after meeting the dude. Even people with a VIP had to wait hours to meet him. Absolutely insane, dude. Again, more reason to get there early, folks. But after that, I ended up walking around the vendors for an hour. There weren't a whole lot of things to look at, but if you like horror themed merch, then you'd pretty much be in heaven, as there were so many things to look at. Hell, I even ended up purchasing some stuff for myself to add to my horror collection. But that's really all I did for today. After that, I drove back home, made a stop for dinner at the Golden Corral for some reason, and day 1 of Creep IE Aftermath had come to an end. Alright, it is officially day 2 of Creep IE Aftermath, so looking forward to that. As you can see, it's already way more crowded than it was yesterday, so today's gonna be an absolute madhouse. Even though today was going to be absolutely crowded, thankfully I didn't have too much on my agenda, so today was going to be pretty laid back. And also, I was going to be joined by my friend Daniel. And yes, bro is in fact dressed as a Mexican wrestler, Art the Clown. The mind of this guy, I tell ya. Anyways, before I met up with him, I made my way over to Christopher Lloyd's table. If you somehow don't know, this guy's got one of the most electric film careers of all time. You got Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, The Addams Family, and even Anastasia. Yeah, he's Rasputin. So I made it in his line, and thankfully it wasn't as packed as Brad Dourif's, but it was still pretty long compared to most of the guests. But I only waited about a half hour once again because, again, I got there early. So Christopher Lloyd was pretty friendly, but he was also kind of quiet, although at the same time he is 87 years old and probably not the best of hearing, so I give him a pass. And besides, with his iconic filmography, it's hard not to be in awe of his presence. Also, you might have noticed my One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest poster. If you didn't know, I'm actually on a mission to watch a bunch of movies over the summer that I've never seen in my life, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest happened to be one of them. And yeah, I can see why this movie is so beloved. It's a pretty damn good movie, I can't lie. So good, in fact, that it's not only in the IMDb top 20 movie list of all time, but it even won Best Picture at the Academy Awards back in the mid-70s. So the idea that I have not one but 2 signatures on a poster from that movie is definitely mind-boggling. Anyways, after I got my signature, I met up with Daniel and we decided to explore the convention some more. One cool thing about Creep IE Aftermath is that they offer a lot of fun activities for the attendees. They had a bunch of pinball machines that you could play for free, and you'd know I had to go with the Iron Maiden themed one. Too bad I kinda sucked ass at it. We also checked out this boxing machine, which was kinda random to see at a horror convention, but it did give me a chance to show off my pretty epic boxing skills. And if that weren't enough, there were even a couple of haunted walkthrough attractions. There was one put on by Fear Farm, which had this weird Victorian era theme to it that I thought was actually pretty cool. And another one put on by Art Sideshow that had a whole Exorcist theme with a bunch of possessed Regans. It was really funny to see the reactions of people who thought that these were mannequins, only for them to reveal that they were actually scare actors. That was fun. And if that wasn't enough, there was even some interactive promotional stuff for upcoming horror movies. For instance, for the new Ice Cream Man movie coming out in August, they had an ice cream truck where they were handing out free ice cream. You can't beat that price. And for the Twisted Childhood Universe lovers, there was even some promotional stuff for Pinocchio Unstrung, where you got to do a photo op with the actual screen-used Pinocchio from the movie. And you know I had to do this one. I was definitely not creeped out by any means. And even though I was already done with celebrities for the day, Daniel actually bought a special VIP package to meet stoner legends Cheech and Chong. So Daniel, who are you about to meet right now?
Me and Cheech and Chong, man.
Show us what you got.
I got a...
Show us your pack. Okay, that sounds terrible out of context.
Oh yeah, let me...
No. This is going on YouTube.
My bad. So basically we got this nice poster right here. Inside, we got a picture with me and Cheech and Chong, right? And then finally, you got yourself tickets and...
Nice.
Uh-oh. You don't need that.
Okay.
Oh. Wow, not going well. You get your, what's this called?
A lanyard?
Thing that goes on a lanyard.
It's a badge.
Badge. There we go. A badge, and yeah, that's pretty much what came in it. Pretty solid for $420.
That's a lot of goddamn money. So, after Daniel got to meet them, we explored the vendors just for a little bit before it was eventually time to go get dinner. And you know, we were feeling a bit quirky after experiencing all that madness. So, where the hell else would you go for dinner when you're feeling that way other than... The Rainforest Cafe, of course. I don't think you guys understand the whiplash of going from seeing horror-themed cosplays to seeing a massive animatronic elephant up close and in the flesh. But we did it, and you know, while this place may not seem like a horror-themed restaurant, I think those animatronics might say otherwise, because good god, what is that? Anyways, for my drink, I ended up ordering something called the Cheetah Rita, which is their version of a margarita. And I'm being dead serious when I say this was actually the first margarita I've ever had in my life. But I'm not gonna lie, it was actually way better than I expected. And then I got something called the Pasta Laya, which is like a Cajun-themed linguine with a lot of protein. And it was pretty solid. Daniel got a cheeseburger and it came out kind of raw. So, you know, that's not epic. Thankfully, he did end up getting another one that was cooked properly. But honestly, it was kind of hard to enjoy my meal while this animatronic gorilla was creepily staring us down, which was very distracting. But after our meal, we decided to walk around the mall a little bit more, but my phone died, so I wasn't able to get any footage for that, sorry. And then I headed home and day 2 was officially done. Final day of Creep IE Aftermath, boys, let's do it. The last day of the convention is always pretty bittersweet, but on the bright side, there was still plenty of cool things to look forward to that day. Actually, I wanted to shout out this cosplayer who dressed as Art the Clown making their way through security before we got in. You were fantastic. I actually ran into this cosplayer later in the day and they handed me an eyeball lollipop. Oh, delicious. So the last 2 celebrities I wanted to meet this weekend were Fiona Dourif and Alex Vincent from the Chucky franchise. These 2 were actually on my bucket list for quite a few years now, so it was nice to know I was finally going to be able to cross them off. And I'm glad I did, because I thought they were both pretty cool people. Fiona Dourif in particular had a very bubbly personality and was very appreciative when I congratulated her on her Emmy nomination. But while I did overall enjoy talking to these actors over the weekend, it was a little disheartening to see how expensive everyone's charging at conventions nowadays. I go over a lot of this in my video about autograph prices, but it does suck knowing that you're going to be spending a pretty penny if you want to meet these people, and sometimes you just gotta pull the plug on certain things if it's out of your range. I was originally going to do both a selfie and a signature with both Alex and Fiona, but after seeing their prices, I just had to limit it to autographs only because I just thought it was too much. And yes, I'm aware you don't have to buy autographs, and I get it. The sad reality is that I enjoy doing this so much that it's kinda hard to resist doing it. But I will say, after this past weekend, I do think this is gonna be the last time I spend a shitload of money at a convention until I feel comfortably financially stable again. The only problem is, it's just gonna get as expensive by the time I come back to another one of these. So sometimes you just gotta face the facts. Anyways, besides that, Sunday was also a very chill day. So remember how I said there was a promotional thing going on for the new Ice Cream Man movie coming out next month? Well, it turns out there was one for the original Ice Cream Man as well, and who better to hand out these flyers than the Ice Cream Man himself, Clint Howard. Yeah, he just showed up at the convention unannounced and was meeting fans completely free of charge. I always like it when a celebrity randomly shows up just as a regular attendee and is still down to meet fans. And he wasn't the only one that showed up this past weekend. Apparently Taboo from one of my favorite bands as a kid, the Black Eyed Peas, was just walking around the convention floor as well. So you really never know who's just gonna show up at these things. So there was really only one more thing I wanted to do at this convention, which was the Danny Trejo Q&A. There weren't really a lot of Q&As at this convention I was interested in seeing, but I figured I should check out the Danny Trejo one because, I mean, come on.
Machete don't test. He improvises.
Anyways, after the Q&A concluded, that was pretty much the end of the convention for me. However, it wasn't the end of my weekend, because I got a little bonus adventure to share with you guys, as just a few hours later, I made my way down to the Hollywood Bowl to see the music of Wes Anderson films performed live. And just like his movies, this show had a stacked as hell lineup with names such as Bill Murray, Jeff Goldblum, Jason Schwartzman, Beck, Devo, and a whole bunch of other legends. Now, I'm not really the biggest Wes Anderson fan. I've seen a good amount of his movies, some good, some not so good, but if you were to tell me how to describe his movies, I'd say it's pretty much the equivalent of staring at a fancy painting in an art museum. It's really beautiful to look at, but the longer you continue to look at it, it starts to feel kind of boring. However, I will say after this concert, I've honestly come around to his style, and it was really cool to see a bunch of people celebrating the work of a cinematic throwback icon. I mean, how can you not love watching a group of singers singing one of the songs featured in Fantastic Mr. Fox, as Bill Murray and Jason Schwartzman are just off to the side playing the bells? I mean, I don't know what this concert did to me, but all of a sudden, I now feel the urge to binge watch all of Wes Anderson's movies. So thanks for that, Hollywood Bowl. So we've pretty much come to the end of this convention recap, but I do got one more thing before I give my final thoughts. That's right, folks, it's haul time. Alright, we just got back from the convention. It's time to do a haul, so let's see what treasures we have in store for us. So, we got a Slaughtered Lamb sticker from the greatest horror movie ever made, American Werewolf in London. So I actually got this sticker from this one booth, and I thought it was really cool, so I came back to his booth 2 days later and got another sticker. We got an Obsession one with Freaky Nikki, and she's got ketchup or marinara sauce all over her face or something. We got a couple more stickers. This is the Severin logo. They're like a physical media company that sells overpriced Blu-rays and 4Ks. But they're pretty cool. And then I don't know what this is. It's a bunch of killer dolls, I guess, but it's another sticker, so that's cool. Here is the promotional thing I got from Clint Howard, the Ice Cream Man. So if you're in Burbank on August 7th, you should go see this. And some more promotional stuff I got. This is for that movie, The Passenger. Don't drive at night, so scary. I don't know what this movie's about, but hey, they gave me a free digital code, so now I have the chance to check it out. And they also, and we also got a little patch, and we got a Pinocchio Unstrung promotional image for you TCU fans that watch my videos. Alright, and how could I forget? The One Wish Willow. This is not an actual One Wish Willow, this is just a replica. And it was actually more expensive than an actual One Wish Willow, so, rip off, I guess. And now it's time for the autographs. Here is my One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest poster, signed by Christopher Lloyd and Brad Dourif, who plays Billy Bibbit. And the reason why I ended up going with a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest poster is because, it's not one of my absolute all-time favorites. I still think it's a really great movie. I just figured the novelty of it being a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest poster is what was really cool. It's pretty much the same way I feel about Jaws when I met Richard Dreyfuss, which, ironically, that movie also came out in 1975, so I guess we got a pattern going on. And last but certainly not least, our Chucky poster, well, my Chucky poster, it's not sharing it with anyone, but in the middle, there's Brad Dourif again, and we got Alex Vincent. He said killing is wrong, so that's a fact. And Fiona Dourif, she wrote a cuss word, it's fine, I really don't care. But yeah, that's the haul, hope you enjoyed that. So, final thoughts about Creep IE Aftermath. If you're a die-hard horror fan, I think there's lots to like about this convention. As I mentioned before, they got tons of cool vendors, activities, and horror icons you can meet, which is pretty standard for a typical horror convention, but as long as it's done well, you'll have a good time. That was actually one of my favorite things about this convention, the variety of things they had to do there. It had all the regular things you'd find at a horror convention, but with the additional things like haunted walkthroughs and the promotional stunts, it made the convention stand out from other ones I've attended. And as always, it was great running into friends I've made over the years at horror conventions. Oh, and something I do gotta shout out Creep IE Aftermath for is their incredibly affordable weekend passes. For all 3 days, I only paid about $60, which when compared to the typical $80 to $100 you'd be paying for passes nowadays, it was a nice breath of fresh air. That being said, I do have a few downsides with this convention. While the ticket prices were overall a great deal, everything else at this convention was expensive as Not just the autograph prices, but some of the vendors and food offerings as well. Seriously, if you plan on going to these things, get ready to spend a pretty penny. Although some booths did give out some free stuff, so it wasn't all that bad. Also, parts of the convention could have used a little bit more organizing. Mainly Brad Dourif's line. I mean, that shit was absolutely nuts. However, it apparently wasn't as bad as when they recently had Robert Englund, which was so bad that people said it was a literal nightmare, no pun intended. And, well, it looks like he's heading back next year, so let's hope that fiasco doesn't repeat itself. But even this past weekend, the most common complaint I saw among the general public was how disorganized the event was. So hopefully they can fix that at some point. And there's one more thing I want to point out that wasn't the convention's fault, but it still needs to be addressed. Throughout the convention, I saw a lot, and I mean a lot, of AI-generated art all throughout the convention. Thankfully, none of it was for sale, but it was still being used for banners, promotional cards, all sorts of things. And we all know how I feel about AI generated art at this point. So yeah, if you're a convention promoter watching this video, try to make it a rule that your vendors aren't using AI generated art of any sorts at their booths, whether that's for logos or especially being sold to customers. It's kind of a bad look if you ask me. But overall, Creep.ie Aftermath 2026 was a total blast and made for an epic and spooky weekend. So with that being said, adieu Creepy Aftermath, and until we meet again next time. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. See ya.